Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan, and today we're going to do something really, really different because you guys have been asking about interviews and so on. So I figured, why not bring someone down from CA and talk about pretty much the history of the DLCs for Total War Warhammer, the past, present, and future. So today we've got Rich Aldridge. How you doing?
Hi everyone, I'm really good, thank you. Hope you're doing well too.
Very, very much suffering in the summer weather, as most people are, I am imagining, but it's that time of year.
It certainly is. It certainly is. A little bit of a respite here today, but I'm sure the sun will be back in force very, very soon.
So, before we begin, now I imagine the grand majority of people who watch my content because of Total War Warhammer know who you are, but just for the case of those who might not, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Richard Aldridge. I'm the game director for the Total War Warhammer series these days, and I've been working on Warhammer since its inception, many, 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 many moons ago. Probably more moons than that are actually in the Warhammer world. And I've been heading up the DLC content the last few years, and I guess the most recent things that myself and the team have been working on for all of you have been like Immortal Empires and the Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs.
Yeah, that's the Chaos Dwarf DLC was quite the surprise in terms of just like, well, everything really. It's before the DLC got announced, I remember going into the forums, seeing people argue of which design you guys were going to go for, with the old original look or the new one. And then we got a bit of both. So it was like, wow, that's great, you know?
You sure did. I think that's partly down to, well, it's not down to me at all, but it's me and the team in that a lot of us remember the Chaos Dwarfs from their, I want to say about fourth or fifth edition versions, rather than the more recent Forge World eighth edition. And we like those top hats and those big tickly moustaches, and we certainly wanted to try and inject some of that characteristic and flavour that we remember growing up with and were so fond of, with the more nasty and brutal metal covered helmets and faces and traction engines that you see in the latter stuff. So I think the art team did a wonderful job of blending those two things together and working with Games Workshop to find that kind of almost middle ground, which I think sits very well in the Warhammer Fantasy Battle universe.
Honestly, I think you guys did incredibly well. I mean, I think it was during the early access period. I must have played around 200 hours of it, to the point that I was streaming about, 10 hours a day non-stop, and dropping about 2 free videos a day because there was so much content. I physically made myself ill, by the way, in one of the
Oh
streams.
no!
Like, I had to take a day off because it's like it was too much. I had suffered a little bit of burnout and so on. It's like
Yeah,
I was
that's a heavy load. That.
it was well worth it though. It was really funny. It was like, I think we got to the point that we captured all of Cathay, all of the Mountains of Morn, all of pretty much most of the Badlands, most of the Southlands. I was launching an invasion of Lustria. At that point, I was like, I need a day's break.
Yeah, definitely restock, re-energize, and then go again.
Exactly. But yeah, so I've got a bunch of questions here concerning a wide variety of different factors. Shall we begin?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So let's start off with just like Lord Packs and so on. Lord Packs have been so far the most common theme of DLC. How do you decide on theming? How do you decide, for example, this Lord versus this Lord? Obviously, things are changing now with, we know from the roadmap that we're getting 3 characters instead of 2.
Yeah. Well, if we go right back down to the very first iteration of this, the concept came for the Grim and the Grave around Sigmar's Blood, which I'm pretty sure that you're aware of and have read and seen. And that was one where obviously we wanted to use matters of the lore, within the universe, to construct packs where there was this common background, common story, things for people to fight against, maybe some relationships that have been built up over the course of time. And that was the first one that we used to sort of set that precedent. Obviously, I picked a very unusual character in that one, which hindsight tells you something which you don't have when first doing that with Helm and Gorst. Um, and the reason why we wanted to have obviously him was that we thought he was going to offer something different and had an interesting backstory, pit against Volkmar, and we had Lad coming out as a free OC, and obviously Manfred was already in the game. We did that. We heard what the players' feedback was towards that, and as much as the thematic of vampire counts fighting empires was a strong one. Obviously, that legendary lord wasn't really so legendary. So next time out, we moved away from that concept of having to find a hard and fast book or article, and we instead looked at more, I guess, still stories in the lore, but they weren't necessarily an outright novel or from Black Library or anything like that. So yeah, King and the Warlord, obviously we know that the Dwarves, the Skaven, the Goblins, the Greenskins, they all hate each other, and we wanted to marry up the fact that those races hadn't had anything after Grim and the Grave, and to build characters and units around that which made sense. So we had two characters there fighting over Carricate Peaks that in theory would be doing battle in all the novels and the like that we read. And then what we hadn't done in those army books up until that point, well, what would make sense in terms of padding out the unit roster, characters and the like. And that kind of really set the precedent going forward for picking these conflicts. Ideally, they're a conflict that exists in lore. Not everyone that we've done in our packs has got that, or have got such a strong one as, say, the goblins against the dwarves. But it was creating that kind of collective reason. Why would this person want to fight this person? What is it that they want to have that they want to stop the other one from having, or are they trying to get one over each other? And it was something that we'd also tried to mimic in even the DLCs that came earlier, like Beastman, where we had Kazarak fighting Boris and Morgor with the Wood Elves. And as we moved into Warhammer 2, I think we just accentuated that. We knew that now these packs, sure, they had some strong mechanics and features that we wanted to tie to the legendary lords and to the units, but we wanted to try to get a little bit more creative where the lore would allow us to, and actually bring those units even closer together to those characters, rather than using purely the units that were left over from the army book. So I think you saw that in Warhammer 2, where a little more inventive, a little more grey areas sort of being explored with Games Workshop, having specialist units that maybe you'd unlock in the campaigns for the given characters, and where the lore made sense, like Elthorin and Grom, we'd really go to town. And then where we needed a match up of the other races, we would definitely focus on, well, what would that rivalry mean, and what would they be fighting over? So, say Ariel for Twisted and Twilight. So that was the general gist of it. And as you say, now we're starting to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, that's honestly really cool. I do like how the theming has obviously changed. One of my favorite DLCs is obviously the whole Oxyotl versus Taurox situation, because that was pretty cool. Like, Oxyotl as a character obviously is just awesome, right? It's a gecko with PTSD,
Yeah.
and then you've got Taurox there. It's like, that was a brilliant cross-game DLC in my opinion. It's one of my favorite ones. I rank that usually on like the S tier status when I do my my ranking videos and so on.
Nice.
But yeah, that's honestly really, really cool. I like to know about that. And the same could be said about units, right? Like, how do you decide what units come into DLCs or not? Is it just like cool factor, nostalgia from tabletop, or do you just have like a list and go, maybe this could work this time, or save this for later?
It's a blend, right? It's a mix, and I'm pleased that you like Science and the Fury, because at one point it wasn't going to be that. It was going to be a whole different DLC, but that's why we always have our ears to the ground and our eyes open, listening to what the community is saying and what they're looking for, what experiences that they're hoping to have, and we're trying to, where we can pivot and react to that, as well as we've got our own plans that we've set out. So it's all right. Oxyotl was always going to happen, but yeah, I think we got the right combo in the end. In terms of the units, yeah, like I say, to start off with, it was very much a case of what is still in the 8th edition army books, right? We weren't maybe as free and as creative and as confident in some of the discussions that we'd have with Games Workshop as to where we can push the boundaries. So, thinking back to that original DLC, we always wanted a big ticket item for each of the armies. So, having the Mortis engine was high on the list, and I think when I first voiced that with the team, they almost fell off their chairs thinking, how on earth are we going to do that? Have you seen how many entities there are on it, and how are you going to have all these skeleton horses pulling it, and it almost like blowing itself up and destroying stuff, right? They were like, wow, that's a bit different, isn't it? But yeah, sure, we'll give that a go, and I think they did a smashing job. But we also hit upon, I'm going to say stumbled upon the Regiments of Renown also, I would say, in those packs, and how much we were maybe not quite expecting people to enjoy what they could offer and bring to it. So as much as the units themselves, how could they synergize, how could they work, either from a gameplay point of view and maybe an aesthetic point of view with the Legendary Lord. These RORs were kind of like the rule breakers. So, these guys don't fly. Well, this unit can fly. I remember when we, I think we had like a mounted Dark Elf unit on some Black Pegasi, or these guys don't topple walls, but this one can. And that was kind of the idea around all the units going in. What's the big showpiece model? What are the ones that are going to synergize well with Legendary Lord in you living and playing out their kind of angle that makes them unique and special? And then what can we do with these Regiments of Renown, which are kind of units you've already experienced, but let them break some rules, let them do something different that you might not already be thinking of.
That's pretty cool. I got really into Warhammer 2. I think it was when Shadow and the Blade came out, because you guys introduced a little bit of a throwback to, I believe, 6th edition, and also a little bit of a hint of Mordheim there, because obviously you had the Law of Stealth. And that for me was like, because I'm a big Skaven player on the tabletop, right? I really enjoy the Skaven. I've got a ridiculous amount of Skaven. So I was like, oh wow, the Law of Stealth, this is this is quite the throwback,
Well, this is it. I think latter end of Warhammer 1, when we started working on Norsca, and we were essentially charting some interesting conversation with Games Workshop, that really gave us that confidence as we moved into Warhammer 2, and obviously doing so many DLCs that we did, that we needed to go digging in some different books that weren't just army books, or some of the much earlier ones, and pull from it what would be an exciting thing. I think Skaven write themselves, in all honesty. I mean, that's possibly why you're maybe drawn to them. You've got nutty scientists, you've got stealthy night ninjas, you've got people casting all sorts of disgusting plagues and poxes. I mean, they are proper Bond villains. I think they are, for me, they're like, I don't play them, I play the Lizardmen, but they're the quintessential Games Workshop race, I think, in this whole universe, that's for sure. They and they're really fun to work on, as you've seen with some of the mechanics that we've come up with. They kind of write themselves as to how fun and silly and over the top they can be.
I got into Skaven during the tabletop time because my first army was actually a Empire army. I had a
Mm-hmm.
the old Talabecland army
Yeah.
scheme, which was red and white. And I tell you what, I found humans to be incredibly boring. So we went to this Malaga Games Workshop. So it's a 2.5 hour drive away. And
Yeah.
I told the guy there, I was like, look, I want a new army. I want something cool. And this guy was genuinely really, really nice. So he was like trying to find something for me. He was pushing orcs on me. He was pushing Bretonnians on me because of the night theme. And I saw this Skaven, and he told me, it's like, oh, it's going to be a very expensive army because there's a lot of choices. Like, no, I want Skaven. I want Skaven. These guys look awesome, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, they are, and I think that's it. You can, and you need numbers as well, right? You need a lot of plastic models or metal models, whichever edition you're playing.
I've like without kidding, I have 1,300 clan rats. Now they're not all painted, but yeah, it's become a meme in the family during my birthday where people will send me boxes of clan rats. It's just way too much now.
Yeah, just a meat shield.
Exactly, exactly. But moving on in the Lord Pack section, actually, I want to ask a pretty interesting question here. Are there any Lord Packs that you wish could have been done differently? Like hindsight over the years, just some stuff that you've learned now that could have potentially changed stuff back then, but you never know in the future with reworks and stuff like that?
Um, I kind of alluded to it earlier, right? In a way, we were going to be maybe doing a different combination of characters in Warhammer 2. And so I think we actually learned on the job, which was really good that we planned well enough in advance that we could take on board what players were getting excited about and who they wanted to be and who they thought needed a rework and all that kind of stuff. So I think weirdly, yeah, your question, we sort of have been through that and experienced that and all for the better because that's what changed up essentially like Twisted and Twilight and Silence and Fury at the end. Um, it enabled us to pick those characters together, to go back and rework those early DLC factions, which that was quite an interesting experience. Up until then, for most of us, there wasn't that same connection with some of the factions that we'd already reworked. A lot of people had joined the team and they weren't there for that first iteration, so it felt quite special and different in that you were going back to things like the Beastmen and the Wood Elves, where you had made that and you were looking at what you had done, why you had done it, and what you should change about it. And some of the niceties around it was that as a group we'd all learn new skills. We've got new tech at our disposal. We'd been embracing everyone's feedback and sort of, certain buttons to push and certain ones to not. So, yeah, I think generally speaking, we learned a lot of that and managed to implement it. I think maybe the one lesson, this is actually probably something that will cross into the future stuff that we'll probably talk about a little bit, is I think gameplay is key. Gameplay is kind of first. I mean, I'm a massive fan of the lore and the characters and everything that goes with it, but you got to be careful in that the lore doesn't stop you from having those new experiences or experiences which just generally improve the game for the player. So sometimes being too connected and tied down to a place or a person or what have you can actually be detrimental to the gameplay. So what you'll see with things like Shadows of Change and Thrones of Decay and the like is us moving a little bit away from, why is Throt facing off against, say, the Sisters of Twilight or Oxyotl and Taurox, to being, why are the Sisters of Twilight so cool? What makes them so special? What is Throt actually here to do? What is his latest plan? And focus much more on those characters and their lore and embrace what makes them so beloved and special, rather than trying to push them together. Now, they may end up fighting together or against one another, and I think that's kind of cool. And there might be some scenarios where that happens and people are fighting over certain things, but it will just allow you to, either if you know them already or they're new to you, to get a real feel for what makes these legendary lores legendary in the Warhammer setting.
That's honestly great. Yeah, I like how, like, say for example, the reworks came into effect. Because let's be honest, in the history of Warhammer Fantasy, the Beastmen were always kind of seen like a bit of a joke. Like
Yeah.
their rules were horrible until for 2 weeks during the end times where they had good tabletop rules, and then the world blew up. So when the rework came in for the Beastmen, it's like, this is the Beastmen that we are told about in lore. You know, this isn't tabletop
Yeah,
Beastmen.
yeah.
These are terrifying monsters. Like Morga, the Shadowgate, for me is one of my comfort factions. When I just want to play Total War, but I don't want to think too much, I just want to have fun. It's like, I'll play Morga. I'll just chill, destroy stuff. And it's a very good way to see how reworks have honestly just made the DLC much more than it already was.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's been a long learning curve for all of us, you know. People often ask me, you know, how was it when you first made the original Warhammer game, and what were you, you know, feeling comfortable doing? We wanted to embrace asymmetric design, which we did, but we also were very conscious that we had a long-standing relationship with our fans, our community, for playing, you know, games where essentially everyone had much the same level playing field and much the same toys at their disposal. So changing that balance was quite a big deal for Warhammer, and you know, I'm pleased that we did it. I think it obviously allowed us to become much freer and explorative in what we did, and really embrace what Warhammer was set out to do by Games Workshop all those years ago. And I think now you're seeing that taking shape in some of the, you know, the more modern titles as well, and the ones that are still yet to be announced and to come in the future, where yeah, not everyone has to have a unit of cavalry and a regiment of rifles and whatever else it might be. There are other ways to mix it up, still keep it balanced, still give everyone some toys to play with, and allow them to compete. But yeah, they can have something special and unique about each other.
That's awesome. So before we move on to the next section, I want to circle back to Warhammer 2. I want to talk about Lady Direfin, you know? She was basically our first new character in Warhammer Fantasy for ages. Like, a few people I know online didn't really take to her at the beginning. I myself wasn't really too sure, but
That's all right.
then she kind of grew on me because, like, let's be honest, she's very unique. And I want to ask, what was the thought process to create something new rather than go for other characters from Dreadfleet or the Vampire Coast?
Yeah, well, I think you've touched it on the head there, right? We were trying to make the Vampire Coast, and we weren't trying to make Dreadfleet. So as much as we've got characters that are from Dreadfleet, when we brokered the idea to Games Workshop, they were very good and very like upfront in saying, well, why don't we find something that feels Vampire Coast like and isn't from the Dreadfleet? Otherwise, you're going to have 3 characters from Dreadfleet and only 1 from the Vampire Coast, and you might at that point be thinking, well, should it even be called that? Should it be called the Dreadfleet? So they were amazing in allowing us to work with them on developing this character, and Andy Hall, very much a powerhouse in this, and we were coming out of all sorts of different ideas and trying not to stray too far down the kind of gimmick routes of things that you might have seen from like The Little Mermaid and what have you. But we also knew that we quite wanted more of a female presence in the game. A lot of what Warhammer has to offer are male or, you know, creature-based characters, and there wasn't too many at that time of female characters, other than the elves. So yeah, we knew we wanted that. We knew that this character needed to be undead as well, and have a little bit of a beef. You know, everyone's got a bit of a backstory. Luther Harkin certainly has, and has certainly paid the price for it and gone a bit cuckoo. And with her, it was like, how do we create someone that's larger and, you know, bigger than life itself? What sort of character might that be? And I think we both went, "Oh, sounds a bit like a diva, really." So that was kind of the starting point, and then Andy started looking into, well, what would a diva be in the Warhammer world, and we'd done obviously Bretonia a little while prior, but we knew that we were trying to connect Warhammer 1 and 2, you know, with the likes of Mortal Empires coming out. And I think that's what just touched the chord, that what if he was a character coming from the old world to the new world, and maybe they were travelling, voyaging by sea, and a shipwreck happened, and then he was off on one and going, oh, maybe there's a god involved, and they could be praying to that, and their soul lost in the sea, and a siren, and boom, there we go. So Direfin was born, and we amped it up with making her an operatic singer and giving her that heritage and background, and how she was scorned by those, and we'll rise from the depths again to impart her vicious tongue upon all those that have wronged her.
I quite like her as a character. You guys did a origin story. I think it's on the Total War website, isn't it, or Total War Access?
Yeah.
Which is, it's great for people who might not know her background, her origins, and so on. It's got a lot of detail there. She's had, I think it was last year at some point, she had a minor mention in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which I think a lot of the fan base then started going, yeah, she's been mentioned in another source. Like, she's not just a Total War thing anymore. She's Warhammer Fantasy. And I think a lot of people warmed up to her for that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, she was very much developed with Games Workshop as much as ourselves. They just helped us get there and realise it.
That is honestly awesome. So let's move on to the next section, and I'm going to start off with quite an odd question. It's like, what do you guys call the Champion of Chaos style DLCs? Like, a lot of my viewers and the fan base, we just call it culture packs, but is there an official name?
Not really. It did stray that awkward line, right? And I think also our pack terminology definitely changed over the course of time. If you think, we called campaign packs back in the day because they had a mini campaign, and when we did Tomb Kings, well, we took that away and gave more characters. So I think the naming convention of it is somewhat strayed. So we like to just think of them as updates now, or DLCs, products, so that we don't put that microscope on it, and actually allows us to then pivot and change based on what players are asking for in the future.
Awesome. Well, the DLC was great. I know a lot of people were tired of me hearing me talk about Azazel during it, because I'm a big Sinesh fan, and it actually brought in this is something I wanted for the tabletops. I always wanted proper mono god style warriors. Getting Warriors of Chaos of Sinesh with the Hellscourge, dream come true for me.
Nice.
So what was it for you guys to sit down and just go, let's just do a massive DLC for the Warriors of Chaos? What literally brought that on?
I'd wanted to go back and rectify and improve the Warriors of Chaos for quite a long time, and we had skirted with the idea prior, and we just never quite managed to get things into place that we wanted to, with everything else that we had going on, or if we've made content that we're excited about putting out there and showcasing. So yeah, we did look at it in Warhammer 2, but as we were doing that, and we knew that Warhammer 3 was going to come out and have a strong focus obviously on Chaos, not the Warriors of Chaos necessarily, but on Chaos in general, it just made more and more sense to us that this is probably the time to do it. We'll let everybody experience the demons and what they can do, and the new toys and things that they offer, and then all the content is in 3 at that point, we've got the new technology and the new advancements from across the series, and actually we went and spoke to our sister studio in Sofia as well, and managed to take a few bits from their past projects in developing this. So yeah, it just felt like the right place, the right time, and that's why we wanted to bring it out first to everybody, which might come as a shock for some, I guess, because we've just given you a massive game of chaos, and then the first DLC is yet more chaos. But we've known that it's sort of fallen a little bit behind, shall we say. Needed some love, needed some attention, and quite frankly, the Warriors of Chaos have just got some awesome characters, which you can do a lot of fun stuff with, which I hope you've seen in that DLC, and they were a nice fit with, as you say, the mono gods. So sort of intersplicing. What was new about Warhammer 3 and about bringing the old Warhammer content up to date with that, with someone new to lead your armies and a few new monsters too.
Yeah, it definitely is. It is this one ranks at the top of my DLC ranking at the moment. You never know for future content and so on, but this one, just seeing all those units, the War Shrine for me was a big thing, right? Like I've always loved the War Shrine mini, just all the different types of Warriors of Chaos. It just means that I can field a proper army devoted to Slaanesh, and it's not an undivided one. It takes me back to the tabletop where you'd buy a box of Chaos Warriors, paint them in different colors, and kit bash them a bit, you know?
Absolutely, no, 100%. That is, if I picture it in my mind, that's what I see. You see that green flocked table with a few hills and maybe some chaos shrines and stuff around it, and as you say, lines and lines and lines of Chaos Warriors and Marauders and War Shrines, but all painted in that god colour that you want to follow, and then you get to mix and match in with the odd demon here and there, and I guess make chaos the way that you want it to be.
That's awesome, honestly. It's such a good DLC. And talking about this format, obviously not asking for direct confirmation and so on, but has there been any consideration about the possibility of using this format again?
Definitely been under consideration. I think it was great that we put a DLC out of this nature and then seeing people's response to it. I think it's definitely an option that we can explore if we want to in the future. And we are doing some different bits and bobs at the moment. It's not anything in the pipeline just as yet, but I think there are other races that could benefit from a similar type pack if we ever wanted to go down that route, that's for sure. But hopefully what we have got coming, and what you'll get to see hopefully sometime soon, is equally as exciting and actually gets you more content across a range of races and factions quicker.
Well, I'm not sure if you check up the forums and Reddit and so on, but the fan base is foaming at the mouth for as much as possible. They really love this setting.
Good.
So we're going to jump into race packs right now. We've already talked about the changes over the years and so on. So we'll jump into the next section. So Norsca and the Vampire Coast never had their own armies. Coast had a supplement in 6th, though. What was the thought process on making them 4 races in Total Warhammer?
So Norsca was a good one in that we were exploring what more we could do with the world setting before we transitioned into Warhammer 2, and we'd already got our big idea, our big plans of merging the content from 1 and 2 together that we'd openly discussed, and what faction could do that. We'd already plotted out that Warhammer 2 was going to have the core races that everyone knows and loves, I was sat there one evening with a few designers, and we were just looking around as to what's in the map, what have we got planned, what can we do next, and we all just sort of we've got some nice big printouts on the walls, right? So we can show all the starting locations and where characters might be and plot the course. We noticed there was nothing in that top part of the map, that top part of the world, being Norsca. And we thought, well, that just feels like a real, waste of a large amount of area that could have a lot of fun gameplay and offer something quite different. So we started thinking about what that might be and who the characters could potentially be. Wulfric was obviously first up, and wanted to make use of him with his background and lore. And when we brokered it to Games Workshop, they had to go away and have a little bit of a think about it, but they came back to us and they went, yeah, that sounds quite an interesting one. How would you feel about having Throg as another legendary lord? He can kind of come from those parts of the world, and then you can have things like the ice trolls and all the rest of it. So we worked with them very closely on, again, how could we expand it out? What could we do to make it feel like their own race, their own special thing? We'd already had our eyes on the massive war mammoths, and then we started looking into other things in, say, the monstrous arcanum, and that's where, again, working together, adding things like the Familiars, which I know are not naturally quite from that part of the world, but again, they've got this kind of mysterious vibe, and what we were looking to go for in terms of the gameplay, and the skin wolves. So we started building it out, and then bulking out the Marauder part of the roster too, doing some digging and some suggestive work there about how can we embrace the various kind of tribes that they have and tribalistic nature, so things like the shaman and I'm trying to think what else we had in the berserkers and the like, and that was I guess something which we'd learned from Bretonia as well, because what was that, probably 8 months prior, something like that, I can't remember, quite a while ago. We'd had that same conversation. Well, what could we do if we wanted to bring that part of the Warhammer world up to that 8th edition standard? Because Bretonia never had that book, right? So that gave us that confidence to speak to Games Workshop on this matter and see what we could build together. And they did the same thing again, the same support when we got to the Vampire Coast. That one was very much looking at, if we were to introduce a new type of race, how could they stand out? How could they be different? And I think with Norsca we managed to achieve that. Aggressive play style, some glass cannons, some interesting mechanics of traveling around the world and obtaining bigger and nastier monsters. And for Vampire Coast, it was, well, we've got a range of magic users now. We've got people that use a lot of technology. We've got, I guess, I don't want to call them a jack of all trades, but the Highers obviously got strong magic, but they've got a lot of other versatilities. We didn't really have a really quite strong gun line faction in the game, what we perceived, and a few of us had worked on things like Empire and Napoleon Total War. So we said, wouldn't it be fun if we could almost make like one of those parts of the game that we all actually quite enjoyed working on and had a lot of fun with back in the day, into a Warhammer setting? So that was very much the kind of the pitch to Games Workshop. We found this supplement, looks amazing. Who wouldn't like to see zombies riding on the back of zombie crabs firing shotguns, and then having mass gun lines with a huge great Queen Bess in the background, earth shattering anything in its wake. And again, because we'd been dabbling in the likes of the Monstrous Arcanum, and some of those units that ultimately go into Vampire Coast had featured there, like the Necrofex Colossus and the Morgulls. Games Workshop again worked with us to try and build something that made sense to them, that represented their IP, and give us that backing to make it is what it was. And I think, oh, I really, really enjoyed making Tomb Kings. I think Tomb Kings is still like arguably my favourite DLC to work on. I think things just clicked. But Vampire Coast isn't far behind, and it's definitely got a lot more tongue in cheek, a lot more fun little elements to it, and the animators I think did an amazing job on bringing all this yucky under the sea undead stuff, well, not to life, but I guess unlife.
Oh, they are definitely the Vampire Coast themselves. It feels like Warhammer when you look at them and you see them act, you see them attack and stuff. It feels like Warhammer, which is something, which because they never had an army book, like you said. There was 6th edition supplement. Most of the stuff that we did have in that supplement was basically just kit bashed from the Vampire Counts army. So
that's right.
seeing that just like brought to life like that. Like I remember seeing the Necrofax Colossus. I was like, wow, And then,
It's pretty special. I was most impressed by someone I saw on YouTube who did a kit bash at that, and I think after that people went, well, can I not buy one in Games Workshop? It's like, no, sorry, it's all kit bashed, all specially made. Fantastic.
Same thing that could be said with the Norsca thing. I used to actually joke around when people would mention the Norsca DLC. I'd say, "Oh, it's the Forge World DLC," because it's a lot of stuff from Forge World. It's the Skin Wolves, the Femia, the Mammoth.
Forge World makes some amazing sculpts, and you've seen we managed to use that a fair few times now, and maybe we'll get to make some more stuff as well that they've done in the future.
Hopefully, because those models, like you said, they're amazing. Like I've got a bunch of Plague Toads myself, and I think those models aged really well.
Definitely. I thought it was hilarious when you don't quite know how big some of these models are until Games Workshop send you a box of them, and I was gobsmacked when I got the Dread Saurian and got that out of the box.
Oh yeah, it's a big boy.
Woo! Yeah. So that is a definite pride and joy, amongst many others.
Honestly, surprised that thing actually fits on the 100 by 150 base. To be honest,
Yeah, it's pretty chunky.
But moving on, we're going to talk a little bit, kind of related to the Chaos Dwarfs. So, the Chaos Dwarfs was a totally new standard when it came to DLC, right? So many new mechanics. There was so much to do. Is there anything that you've learned from the Chaos Dwarfs that is going to be taken into account for future content patches, for example, or Lord packs and so on, possibly when revising all the stuff?
Great question. Yeah, I think what we learned from Chaos Dwarfs is that, if there's a mechanic there already in the game that's already doing a good job, but could be elevated and made to work and fit that race or that character better, then we'll look to do that, rather than always trying to reinvent the wheel from scratch. And I think Chaos Dwarfs landed nicely in that, Cathay had the caravans, which we saw as a good starting point for the convoys. We'd had, things like the workshops and stuff in the past, which, again, we wanted to do something different with the Hellforge and apply perks and buffs in a different sort of way. But it gave us some foundation, some good starting point to work from. And then we quite fancied, obviously, embracing, we've always liked doing it. I think the first DLC where we embraced the thought of having more currencies or resources or things to work with was Realm of the Wood Elves on Warhammer 1, where we introduced Amber, which at the time, that was like a big wow moment for us. We got like another thing to play in the game with rather than just money or population growth. And I guess this is the full evolution of it, where we've gone all the way to Chaos Dwarfs, where now we're thinking about minute to minute, hour to hour, turn by turn gameplay, how can all these systems interact and pull and push one another together, and it really felt very befitting of the faction that we were creating. And I know playing it myself, you know, there was rarely a dull turn. Every turn there was something to think about, something to make happen, something to reset if you've lost a city, and that's the sort of, you know, it's not going to be to everyone's taste, because there are going to be moments where you need a little bit of a downtime, and we need to make sure that we give people that. But ideally, each turn is meaningful. Each turn brings you a new challenge or something to overcome or something to think about and rectify. And I think that's the learning, that's the taking forward that we'd like to have, obviously, going forward in more of the DLCs, maybe in different guises, different levels of it, but making the actions that you choose important ones and ultimately fun ones.
Awesome. It's like I don't know if you've been seeing much for like you know, people playing the Chaos Dwarfs and so on, but I know that it was like as soon as it released, a lot of people were playing nonstop. A lot of people played Grimgore actually first, so they could fight the Chaos Dwarfs. Was one of my streams too, because I was like, you know, this might be fun, because now we've got like Grimgore's big enemy, right? Let's just go in there and see what can be done. And it was pretty fun. Like, I feel like they added, not only because obviously like the Darklands were pretty empty, let's be honest. Now you've got that threat which is rising, and it can be quite terrifying.
Yeah, no, we couldn't wait to make this DLC. It felt very akin to Tomb Kings, where we'd put in a proxy faction or two, and we were chomping at the bit. So it was a hard call when we did Champions of Chaos, knowing that there was Chaos Dwarfs to also be made. But you know, both equally fun. I mean, really, Chaos Dwarfs is the passion project for, if not all, most of the team. It's the one that we'd sort of circled on our calendar from day one of Warhammer 1, that we want to make that one, because it just looks so fun and over the top, and you know, things that you don't come across. You don't come across those armies and those models anymore. So they're so, yeah, and they've got everything, right. They've got some Achilles heels, not many, but they've got massive monsters, gun lines, huge great traction engines, magic. Yeah, they got so much going on. They were really fun.
I remember playing against a lot of Chaos Dwarf armies when the Tamurkhan book came out, which was like, they were terrifying. That the Dreadquake can just delete a unit of Chosen without too much of a problem, and so on.
Yeah.
So I came into the. Oh, you've got one, nice.
I've got a Dreadquake on my shelf behind me. I wish I could show it to you. Yeah, that is yeah. That was the one. I was like, yeah, we got to put that in the game.
I remember when it got announced, I'm telling people, it's like, expect this faction to be very, very strong, because it's taking a lot of the weaponry from Tamurkhan book, and those were just insane.
Definitely. Well, you know, it's got to hit pretty hard.
But let's go into some like general stuff regarding here. So, can you give us any information on how far in advance some planning is done for DLC? Like, we've seen really big plans for the roadmap. It's like, how early does the DLC team start like mapping out ideas?
I like to plan. Is probably one way of putting it. I like to plan because I like to know what is kind of on offer, right? What our possibilities are, and that's a really useful tool in trying to make these matchups or these particular packs, and knowing that, oh, actually, if I drop that in here, maybe that's a detriment to another pack somewhere else. So we like to get ahead of the game and look at what the matchups might be, or, you know, narrative elements which we've done in the past, or what are the units, right? What are the things that are going to supplement and add to the experience? We're obviously looking for characters that are going to do something different as well to what we've done in the past, as much as trying to hit those key characters which are synonymous in the lore itself. So yeah, I wouldn't put a time frame on it, but a healthy amount in advance, and where I can, to try and be in the position like we did in Warhammer 2, where if we need to, and if we are hearing things from our player base, that we can, at times change and get things in line, and hopefully make people's expectations and get the right products into their hands at the right time.
Oh, that's cool. So when it comes to DLC, then what do you guys decide what to do next? Like, because obviously you might have all these ideas, and you've said like ideas have changed in the past and so on. Do you just look at performance of the faction, player interest? There must be a few key factors there, right?
We like to make sure that every faction is, updated, upgraded, given more toys to play with, given new experiences to be had. So you would have seen that as a general basis. If the core factions of this game are X, Y, Z, then we want to make sure that we supplement that. And then we also look at what other things that we can do or take advantage of when they become possible to us, which maybe are outside of those core races and part of those tentpole factions. So that's like, why you saw things like Vampire Coast. That wasn't planned at the beginning of Warhammer 2. That sort of naturally evolved out of our curiosity and our relationship with Games Workshop and talking things through. So even like we've got plenty of fun stuff coming up, and yeah, I want to talk about it obviously as soon as possible, because that's why we make it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that that's going to be the only thing. The opportunities do arise, and like I say, we've probably done some things that we didn't expect to initially. I think it's good that we're in a position where we can be flexible, and if players are naturally playing a particular thing and having a lot of fun with it, and telling us that, then we'll look to try and do more of that. I don't want to be putting out content in which people aren't enjoying, or you don't see too many Helm and Gorse nowadays. Hopefully, as an example of that.
See, at the beginning, and I'll be honest, right? I didn't like Ghost, but I think the patch that came with him for Immortal Empires, that fix for him, really made him, a terror, and it actually made him really, really cool. So I think a lot of people have lightened up to him. I know that at the beginning of Immortal Empires, he was a little bit too powerful, to the point that people were like, I'm just going to actively avoid fighting him. But I think he's actually grown a lot of people now.
I think he has as well. I'm pleased. I'm pleased that people have given him the chance and sort of welcomed him into it. He was a much lesser creation by Games Workshop, but a creation by them all the same, with a weird and horrific backstory. But yeah, I think it's fun that we can do stuff like that. It's fun that we can dig into some of the lesser known characters, and I think you will get to see some. They just won't necessarily be in the legendary lord status. They can form, like as you've seen recently, more of the legendary heroes. I think that just gives us wider spectrum and opportunity to get some fun characters in, but still make sure that we pay homage and precedence to the big names in the lore.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's loads of people who just like I myself, I'm in that category where I just want everything. I literally said it's like I wouldn't be happy until like literally everything was added in, like call food frogs for Bretonia, throwing back to like 5th edition.
That'd be so cool. I know there is so much, and it's just how can we get there, and what makes sense, and how can we package that up together? And some things, unfortunately, are no-nos. That we do get some things that we just can't do, unfortunately. Either they're not part of the the latest and Games Workshop's take on the lore and what is canon. But we've done some things that I think many of us would not have expected when we first started on this journey. So who knows? Maybe things will develop over time, and maybe some things that seem out of reach now might become doable in the future.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. A while back, you had an interview with a website called Video Games SI, I believe they were called.
Okay.
And there's been a few. There's been a lot of buzz, let's be honest, regarding that one. So I just kind of want to ask a few questions there. One specifically referring to, they asked you, I'm not too sure if there was multiple interviewers or just one, but about a certain man-sized maggot, a very expensive one if you go to Forge World. Well, he's no longer available in Forge World, unfortunately. And the response was, well, I think you can be excited to see something like that in the future. Was that referring to the big man himself, or just something else that might have been taken out of context?
I think I said to him as well. I think, yeah, that's what you're hoping for, right? And yeah, look, I'd love to confirm this and everything here today. I think it's a much harder one for me to do, but yeah. In everything that I've said up until now, you can think big. You can think, big characters with big personalities that, might do some hideous and nasty things, and they're going to get some representation in the game. We want to make sure that we get the fun characters in the game and the ones that players love and adore, and read up on, play with, and the like. So yeah, I'm going to just say I think you're going to be pleasantly pleased in the future, but without saying those magic words.
I totally understand. It's just obviously there have been interviews, not just like CA stuff, but like even like Games Workshop stuff that I follow constantly, ex-staff and so on. And there's sometimes the case that it's just lost in translation for the interview, so it's just asking their... If he comes, I know people would be happy.
You're not lost in translation. You're barking up the right trees, and there'll be some fun stuff coming later this year.
Cool. So regarding future content in that said interview, there was a quote saying, "There's loads more content we haven't explored across all army books and across the supplementary books, novels. We're digging quite deep and asking Games Workshop, are we allowed to do that? It seems quite cool. So yeah, expect some good things." Is it safe to say that anything is within reason within Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and then obviously then Games Workshop say yes, no, maybe, convince us, so on and so forth?
So you can't do everything.
Yeah.
That is for sure, right? There's going to be certain characters, creatures, factions, places, things that are just not part of the core IP these days. So we will certainly ask, and we will certainly put forward ideas which we think are respectful to Games Workshop, and work with them on those, and they will certainly give us a good steer as to what makes sense, and what they're comfortable with. That gives us still plenty of room, and lots of things that we can work on, and that has meant that we can go back to much earlier editions. We probably won't be going all the way back to say first through third editions, because they're more like the fantasy RPG stuff, which is out of date. But yeah, the more recent things, sort of fifth through eight, some of the supplementary books or the novels. There's certainly things that we have great conversation with Games Workshop on, try and figure out what best works for those races, those characters, and they let us paint in some little bits of grey area where they can. I think that's what has always made Warhammer so fun, is that not everything is literally mapped out, to the point. They've left room for it to grow and evolve, and that's how our gamers, followed suit and done in a respectful manner, with them signing everything off and giving their blessing to us.
Yeah, I've spoken a lot to my viewers regarding like matters like this because a lot of people want say this unit, that unit, this unit, and
Mm.
I tell them it's like, look, the evolution of Warhammer has been a constantly evolving thing for the past 40 years. If we look at Bretonia on the original version of Bretonia, and you compare it to like Bretonia that we had in 6th edition onwards, it's drastically different. I remember Bretonia having all that gunpowder.
Yeah, it changes, right?
I think that's
Yeah.
what makes it special, and it stopped Bretonia from being Empire 2, you know?
Yeah, and nobody wants that. Everyone, you know, you want those strong archetypes and something that makes them different and special.
Yeah. So, following up from this, we have seen some bleed over from Old World regarding Cafe and Kislev. Um, is that falling
Mhm.
under the same IP for you guys, or is that just like special permissions, or?
So Old World is a different IP, and we are staying firmly in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So as much as there's some new shiny stuff appearing there, that isn't something that we are looking to explore or utilise. We're going to be staying firmly in the kind of the realms of, you know, 5th through 8th edition that you've seen up until now.
So, Kislev and Cafe were just like an exception there, just to allow for them to be made. Because, like, we know, I think it was a Games Workshop article right about when Cafe was properly confirmed in both Total War. They also did an article saying that you guys kind of collaborated for that.
Yeah, yeah. Like on all these DLCs, we did this. We did the same when working on Warhammer 3. With coming up with the, you know, what Kislev and Cathay were going to be, and the characters and everything that makes up the world. You know, they certainly supplied us with some amazing artwork and some backstories and a variety of other things, which then we've asked many more questions on, and how would it work and how they interact, and like what magical items they might have, where might they go, who are their big adversaries, and we built that then together to make something that's right for the setting. So in Shadows of Change, you're going to see more of that. You're going to see the introduction of more content, more new content, which relate to both Kislev and Cathay, and you might. I'll give you a little insight. You mentioned more time earlier, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
There might be something quite exciting in that pack that's to do with more time as well, which we felt was quite befitting for the content that's coming forward. So, yeah, we're still using that broader spectrum of content that's been made over the course of time, but then interlinking some of the new ideas, some of the new things that Games Workshop are making for the universe, and for us to be able to showcase and bring to life. So yeah,
That's
there might be
great.
a thing or two in there for you to enjoy.
That's honestly great because like a lot of people see Warhammer Fantasy and they just think of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but you know, there's the RPG, there's Mordheim, there's War Master,
Yeah.
there's obviously Dreadfleet. There's so much to this IP than most people actually follow. The only problem is obviously I have no self control, so I bought like everything. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember playing, what was it, Manowar when I was a kid. So yeah, all sorts of different things, as you say.
that was such a fun game, a little bit not so well balanced. Let's be very honest.
No, not so good, but yeah,
The visuals were always great though. It's just, and those models, I mean the dwarven balloons and so on, and it's just, it was so good.
fun.
So I've got one last quote from this interview, which is, all plans at the moment have Immortal Empires as well as Realm of Chaos. This is something that's expected, but has there been any idea of, say, Immortal Empires only content? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Oh, 100%. 100% has crossed my mind. But to be honest with you, a lot of the work that we do, it naturally fits into both campaigns.
Hmm.
So sure, there's some elements that are bespoke to, Realm of Chaos or Vortex campaign prior, but if we're making a unit, they're going to function the same in both. If we're going to make a building, they're going to function the same in both. If we make a technology, there's lots and lots of things that you're going to make. You're going to make that piece of content, and it's going to naturally work, or to the vast degree, in both campaigns. And then you've also got to consider that even if you were making it in Immortal Empires only, you're not really, because you'll be updating and reworking those factions in the Realm of Chaos regardless. So you're changing the balance, you're changing the kind of the options available even to the AI factions, even if you weren't maybe introducing a new character to that map or world setting. So you're a good proportion of the way there already, and I think a lot of players, yes, they enjoy Immortal Empires, they enjoy that sandbox nature, but some people want to break from that, or some people have got a limited amount of time, or they want a more targeted, narrow focus. So I think the fact that a lot of the work is shared, why take that experience away from someone? Why begrudge them of that campaign they want to play over a weekend, or that story that they want to learn about and enjoy? So very much the case that all the content going forward is set in both, and we leave it up to the player to then choose which part of it, or all of it hopefully, that they want to go and enjoy.
Honestly, yeah, that sounds fair. We did have like some exclusive stuff back in the day for Warhammer 2, which was Trica. So a lot of people were wondering that it was just basically if that was still on the table and so on. Never know again. Obviously, with plans, you guys might change minds for certain things. This is the great thing about an evolving game like this, where things just change, and it's. I mean, if I just look how many hours I've put on Warhammer 3 alone, I can tell you right now, I have put 2,470 hours.
Wow, that's a fair few. That is a fair few. It's a good effort.
There's a few who obviously have more than me, because right now I've been putting a lot of attention to trying not to die in the heat stroke. But honestly, like it's a game that I can't get bored of, and that's a really good thing, because it's just, I'm spoiled for choice. If I don't want to play Empire today, I can play Cafe, or I can play Sinesh or Zinch or whatever. There's so much that just allows me to just constantly play. And by the time that I've cycled through all the races, there's new DLC coming out and stuff like that. So I've always got something fresh to look forward to.
That's it. That's certainly the plan. It's like we build and evolve together. You tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you're finding fun, what you'd like to see more of, and we're certainly up for it in trying to, make that happen. We do make some mistakes here and there, and we hold my hand up and apologise about that. But our hearts are all in it. We just want to make the best experience, and try and get as many of these characters and many of these experiences in there for everyone to enjoy, and to keep pushing ourselves to try new and different things. And I'm sure we'll take all of this forward onto whatever our next games will be.
That's great, honestly. There's one thing that I want to go into, which a lot of people don't seem to realize, that a lot of CA's staff working on Total War Warhammer are actually big tabletop fans. Like you've been in the hobby for a fair while, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of miniatures up on my shelves behind me, and to my side I've got a ton of painting equipment here. It's a real passion for many of us, and we all like it for all different reasons. I mean, some of us are absolute die-hard tabletoppers wanting to play the game. They absolutely detest making and painting them. So they pass some of those models on to people like me and others who are quite happy to spend hours meticulously painting somebody's weapons and coats and things and spending far too long on it. But it doesn't matter. It's a hobby, right? And it's one that you're allowed to spend that time and get that enjoyment out of. And I think a lot of that shows through in what it is that we make. We care about why we're making these decisions, these choices, why we're picking this piece of content and what goes into it. There's lots of good conversation, around, oh, should it sound like this, move like that, look that way, and it's healthy. With many people, like in all the different races, so it's not like there's one race that kind of stands out from the rest where, oh, everyone's a Skaven fan or everyone's an Empire fan or what have you. You quite often find people coming into the office at a weekend playing a tabletop tournament of some kind, or going and putting some more models in the Warhammer room that we've got, building some terrain pieces. We've got it all going on, and it helps when you've got people like Andy as well, who naturally have brought that love and enjoyment that Games Workshop also equally have for this, and imparted it on those in the studio which maybe weren't so aware. Maybe they'd seen a Games Workshop on their high street, or they'd read that different kind of books and magazines and stuff, but didn't really get into it. And so we've sort of brought that to people, let them have a go, shared out some of the paints, given them some models, and it's become kind of infectious. It's kind of, I think Festus would be quite pleased as how it's bubbled up and spread amongst everybody for the love and enjoyment of it.
Oh, that's awesome. What armies did you used to play on the tabletop? I know that you mentioned Lizardmen. Was there any others, or?
So I was probably like you. I did the classic, I'll have an Empire army. I remember in those old White Dwarf magazines, they were generally always front and centre. There's always a battle report on them. And I quite affectionately liked the halflings that came out in one of the editions. So I quickly got a hot pot catapult and a chef, and I never quite got a war wagon, so that's why I wanted that one to go into one of the earlier DLCs, because that one looked fun. So I played them a fair bit, and I played some of the other sister products as well. Primarily, actually, Blood Bowl. I played a lot of Blood Bowl.
Nice.
And I did have an undead team until my friend said, "Oh no, I want to play as them. You pick something else." So I then took a halfling team and mixed it with a couple of tree men and the hot pot catapult, and came up with some silly rules and messed around with them. Most of the halflings, I think, generally died from the sunstroke that we would roll on the weather effects, but it was a bit of fun. And then lots of other bits that are more the futuristic stuff, but generally speaking, I think I've always had an affinity with the fantasy. So if you look at what I've painted and enjoyed working on, I've got a smattering of stuff. I've got some ogres, I've got a massive lizardmen army, a little bit of high elves. So yeah, whatever draws my eye really, and then I read up on it and get excited about.
That's awesome. So you dabble into all the settings. I do the same, to be honest. I've really been enjoying like Kill Team lately. I do a little bit of 40k, but I'm waiting for the one day, maybe when I finally die of old age, when Games Workshop release an Emperor's Children Codex. But like lately, I've been preparing my stuff for like Old World, because obviously like there's been confirmation that 20mm bases are gone for 25s. So starts the process of rebasing a good like 3,000 miniatures from 20s to 25s.
yeah. That's yeah. I can't imagine how much time that would take.
I'm doing around a box a day, more or less. Thankfully, with this heat, I'm just not sleeping, so I'm getting more hobby time in.
I see.
But like, It's not fun because I'm painting up stuff. Like I'm painting up a fresh new Empire army. I'm doing them in Avalon colors because
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's pretty, right? And like in
definitely.
the old world setting, obviously, like we know it's the Civil War, so a lot of people like Reichland, Mindenheim, Talabecland, and Marienburg are going to get a lot of love. So I was like, well, I want something more church agnostic, so I'm going to go with
Mm.
Avalon. I think
Good, nice. Yeah, no, they're good. They're a good choice.
have you been painting anything lately, or
What have I been painting recently? Well, I've been. I'm just looking around. I've been painting a variety of miniatures which are not Games Workshop. If you like Marvel stuff, I paint stuff that's called Marvel United. But the most recent Games Workshop stuff, a couple of Blood Bowl teams and the Dreadquake Mortar, the Changeling, just all sorts of stuff. To be honest, whatever sort of picks my fancy, that's what I like doing. So generally not the rank and file troops these days, more the individual character or models, unless I want to play. So that's why I've got the Blood Bowl teams all painted up.
mostly because I can't stay still. So like one day I'll work on one thing, one day I'll work on another thing, one day I'll work on another thing. There is someone at CA that I talk to fairly often, and I'll send them pictures, and it's always a different army every single day because
No.
it's like I'm in a panic, like trying to get stuff done.
Yeah, yeah. I've got Lord Croak sitting in a box waiting for me. That's the one I'm really looking forward to painting. I've just got to pluck up the courage to start building him and gluing him together. But I think that's going to be my passion project.
Oh,
In
which
the near
version?
future. The newer one from about 2 years ago, I would say.
Oh yeah, the big one. Yeah, that one's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Because I've got an old metal slan that I've got painted up on the shelf. But yeah, Lord Croak, the new version looks ultra cool.
That's awesome. Right. Well, I think I've taken your time way more than than expected. Honestly, thank you so much for this. This was honestly fantastic.
No worries. It's been fun talking. It's nice to talk to people that enjoy the hobby, obviously as much as they enjoy the game. So hopefully it comes across, from me, but we know that the rest of the team love working on this as well, and can't wait for everyone to start unwrapping and showing off all things that have to do with Shadows of Change.
Hopefully, hopefully it'll be soon. I know a lot of people are like speculating constantly. It's great to see the community so hyped up for something that we only just know the name about. You know?
Yeah, uh, I think that was a nice little touch that we wanted to do, right? Because it's fine saying there's a DLC coming, but I think this is the communication that we want to take forward. Obviously we like to talk more, but be a bit more descriptive, a bit more informative, what to expect. So hopefully people are enjoying that. They've got an idea of what the factions are, but not necessarily exactly what things are. And the name can be evocative as to maybe what to expect too.
Yeah, I'm sure the player base does actually appreciate it. I know I do, for example. It's just nice to have a ballpark of a
Yeah.
name, factions to expect. It's easier because it's like that basically says, look, something is coming, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and then we enjoy seeing what everyone's talking about and what's getting them excited, and maybe where we can, maybe we get to slip a little bit of that in for launch. So let's see.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything that you'd like to say to my viewers before we close for the day?
Thank you very much for continuing to play and give your feedback and support. I hope you've picked up on how much I love making this game and the team does. We've got plenty more fun stuff coming for you in the near future. Keep putting your suggestions out to us. We do listen, we do look, and enjoy Warhammer. Thanks for listening.
Hey guys, so Future Nathan here. Just to say, a big thank you to Creative Assembly, obviously, for the opportunity for the interview. It was great to speak to Rich. It's always cool to speak to someone behind the scenes, and obviously, someone who's been in the hobby a long time too. It shows that Creative Assembly bring a lot of Warhammer knowledge when it comes to their own titles. If you're wondering why there were no cameras involved, it's simply just we forgot. That's the problem. There was a heat wave going on. I wasn't really thinking too much about it. Either way, I had a lot of fun with this interview. There will hopefully be more. I've, had some great discussions with CA over the years, and it does look like, they're open to these types of videos every now and then, which is awesome, as long as it's not distracting them from, actual important work. But yeah, guys, I hope that this interview has brought in some fun answers for you. The idea was to talk about the history of DLCs as a whole, obviously talking about some new stuff, hopefully coming down the line. We got some hints from it. The idea is just a little bit of fun, right? And I think the interview did just that. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.